people sort of just get dispossessed from.
I mean, you guys look at the Bible as a piece of literature, then okay, that's how you see it. But for us believers, the Bible is the living Word of God, the Word of the living God. And so, even though it's written thousands of years ago, it's it, uh, it's still relevant to us today, and it speaks differently to different people.
Yeah, but it's like you don't have to be 100% church to believe in the words. Because to me,
No, I mean it's deeper than that. If you read it 100 times, 1,000 times, its meaning gets deeper every time, and it speaks to your personal circumstances.
yeah,
Each of us differently. I mean, it
set of
has
mind. Your
yeah,
set of mind.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, you mentioned about Bethel, right? Jacob called the place
That's
Bethel.
Bethel.
Yeah, Bethel means the house of God, right?
Right.
Because he thinks he considered that place the what he's witnessed is actually that ladder is that gate to heaven, the gate of heaven.
Right.
and that's and, and that's why we believe is the church today. The church today is the house of God. Right?
And Otto read where he built a temple there, didn't he? Otto, I think he fell asleep. You know,
Or he's muted.
well, he built a temple there, didn't he, Otto? According to what you read.
That was what it said. Let me go back to chapter and verse here. Called the name, and Jacob rose up, and he set it up for a pillar, poured oil upon it, and the stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And for all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. So yeah, that sounds like that's the foundation of his temple. God's house sounds like a temple to me.
Yeah. Now the ladder, the thing that I get out of the ladder is like it suggests like there's a divine presence that isn't distant from person. It's accessible.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like if you look at the way the angels move up and down on this ladder in his vision, that shows me like a ongoing interaction. It's divine. It's divine communication, basically. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it really doesn't matter what time period you're in. It kind of goes into what Tan was talking about. You know what I mean? Like this is something that you can relate to on a personal level, no matter how many years later. You know what I mean? And then a lot of people don't look into it. Like when you look at awakening, okay? No, Jacob wasn't in a temple. He was just in a random place. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that right there tells you that freaking you know, anything sacred can appear anywhere. You know, and awareness doesn't matter. It's not about location. You know what I mean? It could be anywhere. So I don't see like a lot of people believing. A lot of people do believe that if you don't go to church, then you're sinning. There's nothing that says that whatsoever. There's nothing that says that you have to attend a church and be a church member in order to be in God's favor. You know. So I do agree with that. So I
there's biblical authority, but then there's also the traditions of the church itself. I think, and again, Tan's be more knowledgeable about this, but as I understand it, the Bible alone isn't supposed to be the guide. So I mean, that's obviously it's the basis of the church, but then you also have church councils, and you have to adapt to the conditions, like we were talking earlier about, like older traditions are preserved. I mean, like the Day of the Dead in Mexico is certainly not Orthodox theology, but it's perfect. The people involved are perfectly good Catholics, and it's, I don't think it's anything harmful. So, but one thing that strikes me about the whole Jacob's Ladder story is that these stories, like Bob was saying, they don't need to be taken literally necessarily. And I would say that a story this powerful has apparently so many levels that Tan can have this insight into it, because there's the richness of the story. And like I said, I thought he was quoting some Catholic theologian or something. It's like, I'd never heard that. That's really interesting. But the fact is that it's such a powerful symbol that he can connect that way, can read these deep things into it. And I've talked before about, like, great literature, any great literature. There's so much more in it than the author even knows sometimes. I can read Shakespeare today, and I get things out of it that I'm sure he had no, when he was writing it, wasn't thinking about specifically my insights that I'll gain from it. But because it is a great work of art, it echoes with all of life, and the wisdom of the writer is reflected in it even unconsciously, and our wisdom can connect with this knowledge. But it's at a non-verbal level, which is a funny thing to say about what is basically a verbal medium. Writing, which was originally read aloud. So I guess that's my little rant. I think I'm ranted out on that.
You did good. Now, the thing that you also have to take into consideration is before this, and this is where it kind of twists in the story. Jacob, before this vision, was actually a deceiver, and he was a fugitive. Okay, Esau, he deceived Esau out of his right, because he was actually the one who was supposed to get it. And with the help of Rebecca, he also fooled his father into giving his oath to him for Esau's
Right.
fortune. Okay.
Sold his birthright for a pottage, something like that. Yeah.
Because he was the one who was supposed to actually be given all of the birthrights that was passed down from his father. Okay. And what happened was Jacob or Rebecca actually put wool, I believe, on his arms to make to where he would feel like Esau. And there's a ritual that they had to do. I believe it was where he had to cross his arms, and he had to hold them over. And at that time, his father had become really blinded. He couldn't see very well, so he felt his arms and he felt the hair, and he thought that it was Esau.
Right.
Okay, and whenever Isaac went to bless him, he blessed Jacob instead of Esau, and with that blessing, he ended up inheriting everything that Isaac had. Okay, so after that happened, out of fear for his life, he fled from his brother because his brother friggin' swore that he was going to murder him. He was going to kill him. So, and that's when he decided that he was going to rest at the rock that he laid his head on, and that's when he had the vision of the stairway or the ladder of Jacob's ladder.
Right.
So it's a very powerful story. It really is. And earlier we were talking about sins of the father, and this is another part of it that comes back to that sins of the father.
Right.
Not necessarily original sin, I don't think. It could be.
Well, I think there's an aspect of this that we miss sometimes, and I've heard people say, I don't understand original sin just because somebody did it. Why should their descendants be to blame? And But I think it relates to how people looked on things back then. You were, we think of ourselves as individuals, and individualism is a very, very important part of our Western outlook. But it's actually pretty recent, in a lot of ways. And we've taken individual. I mean, people have been individuals, always, but we've taken individualism to an incredibly extraordinary extent. We have something we call the nuclear family, mom, dad, children. And we have this thing about at a certain age, you just go off and scatter. But originally, families stuck together and they would often live in a home. It was perfectly normal that you would live with your parents, and indeed, you would inherit their house and your children would live with you. You were seen in many ways as simply an extension of your family. You aren't just an atomized individual, but you are, in a really very real sense, your parents, and you are, in a very real sense, your children. So this relates to, I mean, you can see it in more primitive ways with the law of vendetta. Feuding, as we call it here in the United States. We have the famous two families, the Hatfields and the McCoys. Some of you may have heard of. I know the Americans here have. And these were families that would have what they call a feud. He'd call it a vendetta in Europe. And basically, somebody kills someone. So, a Hatfield was killed. So, and the next time a McCoy or a Hatfield sees a McCoy, they're going to shoot a McCoy. And the next time a McCoy sees, it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're like a 10-year-old kid or a 90-year-old guy. They're a Hatfield. They're a McCoy. It's kind of
Their
like
way
a
of looking
primitive.
at it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a primitive, though. I mean, it's a purely biological thing. The individual doesn't matter. You're part of that family, and that sin that other family member committed that you might not, it might have been a distant cousin, doesn't matter. It's war to the knife with everyone of that name. Which the Hell's Angels are like that. Attack one angel, you attack every Hell's Angel, and the whole gang piles up on you. So it's a kind of a primitive survival thing for group selection, if you like. But it's also reflects this idea that you are your family. I mean, in a lot of Asian countries, the family name comes first. I used to study with a guy named, he was from Korea, Bong Hak Choi. But in Korean, it was Choi Bong Hak. You were, the family was everything. You're simply an extension of that. And I think most humans, for most of human history, have looked at themselves as part. There's the metaphor of the vine. You're just part of the vine, and perhaps your vine will fruit, and you'll have children or shoot another offshoot, or maybe it'll be your brother's vine or your cousin's or whatever. But you're all part of this great organism that exists not just in space but in time. In space and time, as an individual, you've only got your 70 years and 10, or whatever you manage to get out of it. But looked at from a biological perspective and a time perspective, you are the result of every single one of your ancestors, managing to get married or at least meet someone of the opposite sex. But I mean, you are the result of all of your ancestors, and all of your descendants are the result of you and all of your ancestors. You kind of add yourself to that. So I think that might be the perspective when they talk about original sin. In a very real sense, you are still part of Adam. You are a son of Adam. And in the church's metaphor, we are all sons of Adam. So in a certain sense, we are all related. And of course, nobody fights like family, which explains a lot of our wars and things, if you want to continue that metaphor. But I don't know. That's something I think that it's a little underappreciated. They had a different sense of what the individual meant. So, but that Jacob, he was a pisser, wasn't he, man? I mean, he cheated his brother and everything, and he becomes the hero. And to us today, that seems a little morally, shaky.
Well, I think for me,